Look, we have Lichtenberg figures. I didn't realize Rick still had this piece of wood in his office, or I would have used it during my presentation. See, as soon as humans discover something beautiful in our environment, we want to start recreating it ourselves. And if you're Rick's crazy Addams Family neighbors, you do that with electricity and wood. However, you can find fractals throughout art and history.
All right, fractals in art and history. So, fractals have gone back for a really long time now, and we've used it without even knowing it. Fractals go back in art since like 1830s, and as you can see in this example of the Great Wave by Hokusai, you can see that the golden ratio applies to the waves here. Okay, the waves here, and if you zoom in closer and take a look, they're like waves on top of waves, and you can see that that golden ratio keeps on applying to itself. And not only does it apply to this era, but this this concept of fractals goes way back,
all the way to the Renaissance. Oh wait, here we go. All the way to the Renaissance. So fractals have been gone back all the way till the dates of Da Vinci, and are still even present to and even advancing in modern day. The Renaissance work also correlates with higher dimension geometry and cubism, and I'm going to show you guys a couple of examples of how these patterns and geometric shapes work into Renaissance era art. So we're going to look at St. Peter's Basilica. Does any of you guys want to take a look at it and just take a guess? What portion of this art or this monument could be or have fractals? Let's listen to it.
The ceiling?
The ceiling. Perfect example. You can see that these carvings in the ceilings are all like measured to basically look like each other in work in symmetry. Even all the way to the columns and everything, any square or geometric shape that you can see, all work together to basically express fractals. So this is one example. And so it's between 1500s and 1600s. We could go to the Selmi Mosque, which also has tons and tons of examples of fractals. You can see just by the patterns here going around the wall, as well as the basically calculated cuts in between the stones here, going all around, just everywhere you can see. Or the final example we can see in the School of Athens. Who also wants to take a chance to express like where you guys can see some examples? All right, Jada, since you already.
The recurring arches in the back.
Perfect example. So right here you can see all of it here, all of it here, as well as here, here, all just calculated to express fractals. And something I really want to look into is right here. Something that really represents the golden ratio, but I don't exactly know too much about that. Can someone help me?
Oh, I can help with that.
Okay.
So I'll be discussing about the golden ratio. The golden ratio can be applied to any number of geometric shapes, forms, including circles, triangles, pyramids, prisms, and polygons. The practice is used in feng shui if you're looking at the yin-yang structure. And we're going to move on to make a little class interactive. Now, before we get started with the interactive, there's some things you should know about how to create this design. The golden ratio, or nature's perfect number, is 1.618, also known as phi. Phi is known as God's mouth because there is no beginning and there is no end. Now, if you all look at your papers, what you have in front of you is known as a polar graph. And a polar graph is made with male lines and female circles surrounding those lines, which creates this. And first, we're going to start off with one golden ratio. Later, we'll get on to the second one. But first, we're going to try describing how to create this. So, who has a pen with them right now? All of you should. Yeah. All of you should have pen. Okay, in this case, let me get a volunteer from the audience. Well, no, the pen was for you. Natalie, would you like to be a volunteer?
All right.
Okay, so I'm going to have you guys circle. Is that permanent?
What?
Oh,
Excuse me, what?
it's fine. We'll clean it later. Anyways,
Why?
so we're going to start from our angle 1. So all of you on your paper, if you look at angle 1, it starts at 0 or 360 degrees. So we're going to start with a dot here, then we're going to go to angle 2, 120 degrees, which is diagonally all the way across. Now, from 120, we move down to 240, so a straight line all the way down, and from 240 all the way back to 360. And you should have a perfect triangle that looks like this. Now, we're going to be repeating the step again by starting at 60 degrees, so just opposite. And then we move all the way down to 200, oh, I'm sorry. We move all the way down to 300 degrees. And back up to, oh my God, it's off. Yeah, to look like that. Anyways, basically we're gonna have this figure right here. Now, you're probably wondering what this is going to be looking like soon, and what exactly we're drawing this for. So, in nature, there's a male and female part, so that's where the second perfect ratio comes from. So, you're going to be drawing another loop inside the star.
Do I need my circle in the center?
Yeah, you're going to need a circle in the center. And one loop goes down, and you're going to be creating a yin-yang structure.
Okay.
And one more up top. So it's yin-yang.
Oh, goodness.
And the reason why we're doing this relates back to this. So this is between the male and female parts from the lines and circles. Now, we're going to be having this structure here. And this is important because I have a video for the next slide that will explain the reason of having this. So these circles represent this circle right here. And these circles can fit every single triangle in this space. Now we watch the video.
Here, we mentioned this in lesson 7.
So we're going to start right here.
It's pretty crazy and very eye-opening now that we have this information about what this really means. Inside the star tetrahedron, another one fits perfectly. We can continue to put more and more star tetrahedrons inside or outside of the other star tetrahedrons. The same way the golden mean spiral can wrap around the polar graph infinitely big or infinitely small. You'll notice that this smaller tetrahedron also happens to fit perfectly around this sphere. Well, check this out. If you put this same size sphere centered on the point of every single star tetrahedral point, guess what suddenly reveals itself? It's back. According to the Egyptians, as well as the Ascended Masters, this is one of the holiest, most sacred forms in existence. Of course, we already learned one of its informational systems in lesson 6, and what you just saw was the second, only in reverse order. What this means is that all of the information of music, harmonics, sound, and spirals come out of this image. Not only that, but light and the dimensional levels work in the same way as harmonics, which we've already discussed in lesson 2, 7, and 9, meaning that the geometric information about light and dimensions are also related to this star tetrahedron pattern. So just briefly looking at this image that we looked at in lesson 7, this is the fourth unraveling of the flower of light. It is an infinite spectrum of never-ending fruits of light within more fruits of light. This is the unraveling of dimensions, so it makes a little more sense now. But I won't have time to show you anything more today. So what you just saw was the second unraveling from the third rotational pattern of Genesis, the geometry at the heart of creation.
Okay, so this gave a brief summary of everything in front of you guys right now. This circle literally relates to everything in the universe. And now we have wrapped around the history of this. Now I'd like to talk more about the modern history, which relates to...
So I'm covering modern art. First, I'm going to talk about a few artists that did fractal art. So we have Jackson Pollock, and he rose to the top of modern art here in the U.S. in the 1940s. His paintings were known as natural and organic, so a lot of the time when they were trying to figure out if his work was fractal work or not, it was compared a lot to natural images because they shared a lot of characteristics. Fractal expressionism was the term that was given to his artwork because it was given to his artwork to state the difference between this and the generated art, which you'll see in the next slide. So Desmond Paul Henry, he constructed mechanical drawing machines. He did 3 of them in the 1960s, and he didn't start them from scratch. He used machines that were used for the military to like pinpoint where bombs would be dropped. The aesthetic appeal of these mechanical fractals is known as chaos. And Desmond Paul Henry basically was one of the pioneers for what ended up being computer art and graphics. Now relating this all to the connection between art and nature, it's a reoccurring thing you see come up. Recent studies have demonstrated that looking at pictures of natural scenes can change the way that the person's their nervous system reacts to stress. Are fractals responsible for this? Through the studies, we discovered a universal effect called fractal fluency, and through this, they optimize the observer's capabilities as enhanced attention patterns and recognition, which basically relieve them of stress. So not only do we use fractals in art, another form of art that we use it in is fashion. So now we're going to explain how it got incorporated into fashion and current fashion.
Fractals and fashion? What? Who would incorporate the two together? Like math and clothing? Alright. Fractals started appearing on clothing and everything else literally in the late 1970s. So like clothing, clothes, accessories, all because of Jane Barnes. She realized the pattern of fractals and she applied it to men's clothing. This method could only be done by computers, so it made her clothing unique, and it was not something that could be done by hand. Now, how many of you guys would wear something like this today?
Just raise your hand, right?
Yeah. Right. So this is something that Jane Barnes created, and it was all made by computer programming. A little something more modern is like Versace. Versace actually uses a lot of fractals in their clothing today, as you can see. A lot of this stuff reminds me of the Renaissance era. As you can see, like a lot of it is symmetrical, and it also displays the golden ratio, and it's also gold, so that helps. If you can see here, if you were to zoom into these, they basically display the golden ratio. And I kind of think of this as the modern Renaissance we have today. You know? In conclusion, fractals and art have been hand in hand, and they've been together for a very long time now, regardless of our knowing or not. Thank you.
Abbas.
Yeah, you guys mentioned about Da Vinci, right? He was a great artist and also kind of scientist. Did you guys, I mean, if you guys read about the Da Vinci Code, the book, and he kind of have his own way of writing, right? Is it like how he writes his own letters and stuff? So, do you guys relate that to the fractals?
I was relating it to how far back it went. So how long we've been actually working with fractals without even knowing it. So we're just bringing it back. That's why I referenced Da Vinci.
But there's no like correlation.
Not that I saw.
All right, now I got a question from like you, Don. Say like fractals in fashion. It's kind of interesting to see how like fractals are in our daily clothes that we don't know about. But like, is there like, how do you know like specifically fractals, or like you just tell them? How do you know specifically it's fractals?
So what made me think of these things as fractals is that they're repeat and they're kind of symmetric. As you can see in this one, if you could just like imagine zooming into it consistently, like I believe the pattern will stay the same. I mean, if you can zoom into clothes non-stop, like it'll just be repetitive. I also believe this design right here, if you were to just keep on going at it consistently, it would also be repetitive as well. And it also applies like aspects of the golden ratio aspect that Matthew was talking about before.
So my question is, how does the Fibonacci sequence go hand in hand with the golden ratio?
Okay, so the Fibonacci sequence, they have, they relate from angles, so all the angles in the poles, it relates down to, we can eventually get back. Okay, so it was talking about the Fibonacci sequence and the binary sequence, and the Fibonacci was included because it pinpointed every angle where the male and female polar graphs intersected. They're not included on here, but the angle measurements were included to let you know how each piece intersected and started forming this golden ratio right here, this spiral. And because it's male and female counterparts, you have to double this to create a double piece, if that answered your question. So that's how it's included in creating this